Hello, I am Father Danny Pegg, and some of you might remember me from May Camp last year when we were online, and before that I've been in the sweet shop, I've been doing all sorts of bits and bobs. At the moment we are here to talk about sharing our faith. There's all sorts of ways you can do that, but you've probably heard about people sharing their testimony. What do we mean by testimony? Well, testimony is our individual personal story of faith, of coming to faith perhaps, or a special time in our faith in which something was happening, God was at work, and it was very important for us. And if it's important for us, it's worth sharing. Because we're not just talking about our own subjective experiences, but we are talking about God at work in our lives. And you can probably think of other people's stories, maybe the people that lead your church, or you've seen some inspiring videos or people at big festivals doing this. And it's people's stories often that really show us how God does what he does. The Bible, of course, is full of people's stories. It's not just a list of facts about God and what he does, but rather how he has worked in the world, in our lives. And that is why it is so striking. If it's good enough for the Bible, it's good enough for us. Now, I think the only real way to show you about testimonies, if this is new for you, or if you've been wondering how you can even tell your story, is to simply tell you mine. And my story starts when I had been exploring religion a lot. I'd been studying it before, it interested me, but I didn't believe in any of it. I didn't know anybody who went to church, my family didn't take me to church or anything like that, but I had an interest in religion. And so when a relationship came to a horrible end, which was mostly my fault, by the way, I thought, well, I'm going on to do some more studying about religion, doing a theology degree. Maybe I'll go and find out what happens in one of these churches. Now, I didn't think that because I was sad and in a really bad place, maybe God was calling me to a church. I didn't have that language then. But I thought, no, I'm going to go along and just see what happens at one of these churches. And it's got nothing to do with how I feel right now or anything like that. So off I go to the nearest church I could find, which was one in Brighton. Went along there, sat down, and I decided, I'm not going to join in. I'm not going to say any of the words of this service or anything like that. That wouldn't be okay. I'm just visiting for study purposes only, obviously. But I sat down, service hasn't started, empty church. And I look up at Jesus on the cross. This church had a big crucifix at the front. And I look up at Jesus on the cross and I was just overcome. I was laughing, I was crying. These poor people in this church must have thought, what is going on over there? But it just all made sense. It was like God was saying to me, I'm real and you've got some catching up to do because I've been calling you for some time. When we read in the Acts of the Apostles that when Peter preaches about the Holy Spirit to some new people, they feel their hearts get cut. They feel like it goes straight to their heart. That's how it felt for me that morning. And that's why all the emotions were coming out, because it felt like, of course. And now I've got where have I been all this time? I've got to catch up. I've got to do all these things. And so I ended up saying every single word of that service that I had not planned on saying at all. And before you know it, I got more and more involved in church life. I started serving at services, started leading the prayers and doing different things, being on committees, all that stuff. And well, look where it ended up. God knew what he was doing for me. Now, I tell that story a lot. I tell that story to the congregation I serve here. I tell this story to groups, all sorts of people. And different people take different things from it. And some people say, but you've got a nice story, like all that worked out. And it wasn't like that for me. I went to church all my life from a child to now, and that's what's happened. But when I start to ask them, okay, but what were the special services you've been to? When did you struggle with your faith? When did faith come easy? All those sorts of things. When we looked at their story from a different perspective, soon they had loads of interesting things to tell me. Things that I've never experienced. Ways of understanding God or praying that have never happened to me. We all have these interesting bits of our stories. And if we share them, I think, as I said earlier, it's the clearest way we have to show God at work in our lives, here and now. So whether or not you think, oh yeah, I know how I could tell my story, or oh no, it's my story is nothing special, I promise you, for somebody out there, there will be a nugget in there, a bit of your story that chimes and resonates with them and helps them. God's work always does that. We find that with the Bible again, don't we? We read bits of the Bible and sometimes we think, oh, that's great, that makes loads of sense, that's exciting. And sometimes we read another bit and we go, oh gosh, why is that here? What do we need from that? But we read the same reading a year later and we're excited about a different part and not this part, and so on. It's how it goes. So whether or not you think you've got an exciting story to tell, God at work in your life is an exciting story to tell. And it might be worth trying to figure out how you can share it, because there'll be somebody out there who needs to hear it. That much I'm sure of. So that's Testimonies in a nutshell. Why don't you give it a go?
Hi everybody, it's lovely to be able to share this time with you, even though it's via a video and not in person. But my name is Laura. I'm currently studying at the College of the Resurrection up in Yorkshire, and I'm studying to be a priest. And this summer I will be deaconed and will be joining a parish in Rustington, in the diocese near Chichester and in between Brighton. But today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sharing our faith and what that means, and times when it's been hard and times when it's been easy and felt true and right and good, and exciting to share faith, because our faith is an adventure all the time. We're being called into different wonderful adventures by God, by His Holy Spirit nudging at our hearts. And I like to call it the God of surprises, because you never quite know where you're led up. But I wanted to start, there's a passage at the end of John, at the end of John's Gospel. It says, "But there are also many other things that Jesus did. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written." I love that passage, that verse there, because for me, sharing our faith is about storytelling, but storytelling in the most truest way. And the passage where it says, "I suppose the world itself could not contain the books that could be written," our lives are those books. Our lives are those extra books that the disciples didn't write because they didn't know they would happen yet. When we share our faith, we're telling people about the ways that God has worked in our lives, in the good times and the harder times of life. And sometimes that might feel a bit scary, because it's something that is not always talked about. But for me, what is so exciting is that when we do share our faith and we share it from a place of truth in our heart, it always provokes curiosity from people, and it makes people question and wonder and imagine, and that's what our faith is about. And when we share it, it's about provoking people into imagining that there is a God who loves them so much that He came and was among us as one of us. One of my favourite times of sharing my faith was I wrote poetry. So I'm a poet as well as training to be a priest, and I used to go around the country and do open mic gigs and read poetry in crowds of people. And I have a story that I wrote a poem about, and it is about one of the ways that God has worked in my life, or rather to to cause my life. So my mum, she couldn't have children, and she had a fault in her pituitary gland, which is in the front of your forehead, and it controls all your hormones in your body and regulates them. And it's one of the ways that helps you to be fertile and to have children. But my mum's wasn't working, and all the doctors under the sun and the moon had said to her, I'm really sorry, but you won't be able to have children. And this was really hard for my mum, and she was on the way home from one of these appointments where the doctors had given her the hard news, and she was driving home, and there was a car driving on the other side of the road, and it crashed into my mum's car, and my mum was flung through the windscreen, and she had to be cut out, and she hit her head on the steering wheel and was unconscious, and the ambulance had to cut her out. And they took her to the hospital, and they didn't know it at the time, but that crash, that smash, had started my mum's pituitary gland working. And 9 months later, not that much of a miracle, but 9 months later, I was born. And for me, that story of how my mum came to be able to have children because of a car crash, for me, it was a true testament of God working in and amongst the hard stuff, in and amongst chaos, and bringing new life out of chaos and out of death and out of pain. And for me, it was a miracle, really. And but it was a testament that always when we feel at our most broken, God is there with us, working always to bring goodness out of the hardest situations. And so I wrote a poem about it, which I won't share with you now because it's pretty long, but I shared that poem in a gig, and afterwards people came up to me and were asking about my faith, and I shot up a prayer to the Holy Spirit, and I said, please bless me with the words to help me tell this story to these people. And so that is what I would say, is whenever you feel nudged in your heart to share your faith, always shoot up a prayer, because God will be with you in those conversations, and he will draw you into conversations with people, and it's the magic in the middle of those conversations where he is at work, and he is at work drawing people into love and into knowledge of him through you. And that's really exciting. So go forth and share your faith. Don't be afraid, and enjoy the adventure, because that's what it's all about. And trust that God will be there with you, holding you in it all. Have a wonderful time at May Camp, and I can't wait to join you as soon as I can.